So.
Oh yeah, I don't like how my beard looks. Can you just?
We're gonna edit that out. Yep. Frame by frame.
You know, Will Reynolds asked me whether I dyed this part and this part. He was like, because I see you're going gray all around here. Do you dye this? And I was like, yeah. Dude, no, I don't dye my mustache and
just for men, right?
Yeah, it's just the pattern. I don't know. It's
you
like
just have that natural kind of look, that musketeer, or is it like you've got pirate jeans or something? It's a good style.
Exactly. One of those rare Jewish pirates, very nebbishy on the ship and just like always worried about the booty. That's me.
You look great. Pumped about the show.
On today's show, we have Rand Fishkin, CEO and co-founder of SparkToro. SparkToro is a groundbreaking software platform that specializes in unveiling who your audience is, what they talk about, and where to find them. Beyond his leadership at SparkToro, Fishkin helps companies and individuals improve their marketing strategies through his extensive writing, engaging videos, speaking engagements, and the insights shared in his book, Lost and Founder. Rand launched SEO Moz in 2004, and his blog quickly became the leading community for search marketers, laying the groundwork for Moz's evolution from consulting to a marketing software giant. Moz grew over 130 employees, $30 million in revenue, and over $30 million in annual visitors, with his tenure marked by crucial fundraising, acquisitions, and strategic rebrand. He co-founded Inbound.org with Dharmesh Shah, which was later acquired by HubSpot in 2014. And beyond marketing, his role as an indie game developer at Snackbar Studios reveals Fishkin's broad creative talents. Internet, please give a warm welcome to the one and only Rand Fishkin.
Rand Fishkin, welcome to the show.
Oh, Andy, Chris, thanks for having me. Great to be here.
This will be fun. Okay, so very simple. We're going to go around and do kind of a quick lightning round and bring us some topics. Chat about this a bit. I've got something in mind, but Chris, why don't we start with you? Jump right in.
All right. As you know, I do that visual Prezi video thing, so let me just share my screen real quick.
Cool.
Ooh.
Yeah, I know.
Fancy pants.
You impressed yet?
I'm already impressed, and it hasn't even come up on my screen.
All right. So I was telling Andy before the call, I had the sales guy, and the sales guy was super fearless. 10 years ago, calls up the International Trade Administration, and he's like, hey, we want to present to you and stuff like that. And they were like, yeah, sure. It's formed this relationship. I've been presenting for them for the last 10 years, and it's been wonderful. They have an event called Export Tech. I get about 2 clients a year from it. It's actually really, really wonderful. But one of the things that they always try to do is they try to say, hey, how can we make the world as small as possible? And what I mean by that is, what, from a marketing perspective, from a technology perspective, how can I make it actually like smaller? And so I just did this presentation, and so rather than reinventing new ideas for today's show, I thought I would go over some of the highlights of what I brought up, and then I'm going to close with some Adobe Max stuff if you didn't see that already.
Sounds
all
good.
Right, so this right here is YouTube and HeyGen. HeyGen already has this tool out. YouTube, this is going to be out in Q4, and this is kind of crazy technology. I'm sure you guys have seen this, but maybe our audience hasn't. You see, most companies struggle to prove ROI on their marketing because they neither have the time nor the expertise. Our system ensures that businesses make data-driven decisions. And with that, they're able to grow and scale their business with clarity. Okay, now here's where it gets cool. Please focus on my eyes and my mouth and my gestures. De acuerdo, ahora aquí es donde se pone interesante. Por favor, concéntrate en mis ojos, mi boca y mis gestos. D'accord, maintenant voici où ça devient cool. Veuillez vous concentrer sur mes yeux, ma bouche et mes gestes. ठीक है, यहाँ ठंडा हो जाता है. कृपया आंखों, मुंह और इशारों पर ध्यान दें. Ora ecco dove diventa interessante. Concentrati su occhi, bocca e gesti. Jetzt wird's cool. Koncentrieren Sie sich auf Augen, Mund, Gesten. Dobra, teraz zaczyna się fajnie. Skup się na moich oczach, ustach i zachowaniu. Ok, aqui é onde fica legal. Por favor, concentre-se nos meus olhos, boca e gestos. 现在就要变得很酷了，请注意我的眼睛、嘴巴和手势。 It's pretty scary, right? Now let's take it one step farther. This is me speaking in English. Pretty creepy, right? 这是我用普通话说话. And now I'm back. So what you sort of saw here was I simply just uploaded a video into HeyGen. It's connected to 11 labs, and essentially you can basically delineate what voice you want it basically to export in. So you will speak in English, and the people on the other side will hear it in their native tongue. They also have technologies out there called RSI, which is real-time simulated interpretation. And when you combine that with just some of the things that we're doing with ChatGPT, where you literally just go in, you have something in English, you do a prompt, you can change it to Mandarin, and then you can use one of their third-party plugins, and it has what's called the translation rater. Basically, it rates how well did it do a translation. And so what it's doing here is it's making the world like very, very small.
Yeah, right. Just like you said. Yep.
You know, and I think if you think about total addressable market, you're thinking about if you selling products and services. You know, I do believe that these technologies are like even the virtual avatars. They're going to be in a spot where it's gonna open up, like I said, that addressable market in ways that I saw this technology coming, but it just felt like it was an idea that's going to be in the future, and then it was just here, and it's just shocking how quick everything is coming. Now, Spotify is getting crushed. They put $1 billion into podcasts, and they got a lot of pie on their face. But by the end of Q4, every podcast that we've ever done, past and in the future, will be in every language across the world. So Mr. Beast was on Joe Rogan. He was talking about, hey, how do you get so many likes? How many get so views? And he's like, I spent a ton of money translating all my stuff into all these different languages. And this is just going to be done for us. So Spotify, while in the short term, they're sort of getting crushed. In the long term, I actually think, like you said, the total addressable market, I think they're going to make a ton of money in ad revenue. If they can own the content, not the own the content, yeah, they're going to own the content from some certain terms and conditions. They're going to come out as a really big winner. Right? Let me get into the Adobe stuff, and then we'll talk about both of them together.
Okay. Yeah, I'm reeling, but I'm ready. Okay, keep going.
Yeah, exactly.
Just keep hammering on us, Chris. That's fine.
Yeah. So from an Adobe Firefly standpoint, you've seen a lot of the newer stuff. Obviously, you speak this from an editing standpoint. You basically type in a prompt, and you can change things. Type a day. You can change the background, et cetera, et cetera. You want lanes on the road. You just ask for it, and it's there. I work with a lot of orthopedic surgeons. They don't wear stethoscopes. I ask for it to be removed, and it's done. But the new thing that and then this is another fun, just for fun. This was done by Vermeer, probably in like the 1600s.
Yep.
You just ask the AI, and it just imagines a background.
I've seen
that. You can do that.
Yeah.
Yep. Runway, Runway ML is going to do the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll do that in video format, right? So you got some crazy stuff that's happening with that. And then now Adobe just had their Max event, and the Max event was really, really cool. I've never been to this event, but man, it looks like a really fun place to party. But they have something here.
And then you can just click on things and move them around. Matter of fact, delete it. The shadow goes with it, there are no holes in the background, and we can put something else in her hand instead. All of these blurry people in the background that I want to take out, I don't even need to tell it who to delete. It just understands the assignment. And if you want to change your outfit, you just select each piece with one click and describe the clothes you want to wear in your own words.
So like, what did you just see here? This is just a normal photo.
I saw the end of democracy. Rand, what did you see?
Yeah. You're not kidding. I mean, like literally, you could just be like, hey, I don't even want the suitcase there. Okay, let's move that out of the way. The AI imagines the background, and then let's just change it to amazing. Flowers.
Yep.
There's 3 different flowers here on the bottom. You want to change out the people? Sure, just imagine. So yeah, that should be a good idea. And they're gone.
Yeah.
Change outfits? Sure, gone. Okay, fine. Now my major thing here, and this is the point of concern, is the thing that I can't find in Midjourney, I can't find in Adobe here, is what I'm calling like the continuity, the idea of continuity. And so it's amazing that they're doing really great ideation and doing all this stuff. But I think where marketers are going to really need to see this is that, hey, this is the template of my brand. These are the things that I liked, and these are the variables of what I want to see change. And so it's really great that it's early days and we're in ideation, but I think that whatever company, like I think Canva is probably going to take a really big bite at that, but it's just going to be one of these scenarios where you're going to have to be in a scenario where you say, this is my brand, this is the continuity I want to do, this is the variables I want to change it in different social media formats and things like that. And it's got to be intuitive to know what stays and what goes.
Makes sense. Kind of like the language generators like Jasper and these tools are actually trying to keep everything in the brand voice in terms of text. You just described continuity like to create a visual standard where like, you know, we're hot pink, we're always hot pink, don't show me any pale pinks. You just set that standard and then everything aligns?
Yeah. I mean, that's where I feel like this has to go, because ideation can get you so far, but
yeah,
you know, yeah.
Well, part of what you just did kind of avoided a lot of the issues like creator rights. You mostly showed editing use cases, which is a bit refreshing after a lot of the stuff we see related to like just creating images out of nothing. And what does that do for people that, you know, for photographers or, you know, game designers or fine artists? Like it's, you know, the digital art world is upside down already. But those are things I think, you know, it's really hard to say that there's except for fake news and the problems with truth and veracity and like, you know, what are we seeing? Do we believe what we see? Mostly you just showed I mean, those are fantastic use cases, and we know that Adobe trained everything it has on its own stuff. So it didn't use anything that's anyone else's copyright to be trained. And it's mostly it just, yeah, cool with all of that. And the algorithmic way to edit images. Some of that we're familiar with just from our phones, but that is a big productivity gain for all the touch-up people in the world, for sure.
Yeah. Now, my argument, because I'm basically doing this state of AI thing about 20 times a month, and the main thing we were saying was like, am I going to lose my job? I'm a graphic designer. And what I've seen is there was a line in the movie Limitless where he takes this pill and the next day he goes back to the drug dealer and he's like, dude, what is in that? And he goes, well, it's really good if you're smart already. What I'm finding is that people that have no artistic skill are getting to good, but the players that already have a lot of really great creativity, it's like rocket fuel. And so I do believe that there's going to be a lot of real estate for really creative people to really explode with this. And it's not going to be like the average person just took my job. I think there's going to be room, at least in the short run.
Well, back to that first thing you said, which touched a nerve for me, because I spent 4 years in a classroom studying Mandarin in college, got an Asian language degree, moved to China, immersed myself for another 9 months. That's how long it took me to learn Chinese. I have mixed feelings seeing you speak 11 languages in 10 seconds with no effort.
Yeah.
But I think we just all have to say, like, you know, if the United Nations made this statement years ago, you know, access to information is a human right. If access to information is a human right, then what you just described is accessibility, not just lowercase a accessibility for the world. So making the world smaller, I think, is generally good. As kind of a left-leaning globalist, I'm cool with that. And reaching more people, helping more people. What's the mission of any content marketer? Let's make a difference. So, Ram, what do you think?
The firepower that you two have, just one last thing. Like, you guys have a much larger audience than I have. Everything you've ever done from your Whiteboard Fridays, or was it Whiteboard Fridays? What was that? How did you brand that, Rand?
The new one, the new series is 5-minute whiteboards. Yeah.
5-minute white. You know what I mean? Everything you've ever done, they're literally going to go back with YouTube, and it's going to be in every language. You know, and it's not like you went and you're like, okay, great. Now I got to go back and everything I've ever done, I got to pay like some virtual assistant to upload it. It's just done.
Yeah.
Like your TAM just went worldwide. It's crazy.
Yeah, I wonder, I don't know, I have quite a bit of skepticism around this in terms of, I wonder to what extent someone would want to, especially for small and medium creators, listen to someone AI generated in not their native language and find that compelling, and like the cultural references are all right, and even if the translation is flawless and perfect and the mouth movements all look great, yeah, I question whether I would resonate in French or Italian or German or Mandarin the way I do with an English speaking audience? My guess is less so.
That is for sure true, because anyone in the category of translations knows that it's not just translation, but it's localization. Culture matters. They won't get any of the references. It's not. It's just like a photocopy replacing the words. There's no. It doesn't necessarily. It's not even meant to land. It's just meant to be translated. It's the difference between translation and interpretation. Translators
so
do text.
Yeah, I think there's use cases for all this stuff. I will say, Chris, I'm by no means an AI expert. Most of my AI usage is not in the visual or artistic world. I do run an indie video game studio. I don't know if a lot of folks know that, but
what?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I run a small. There's only 4 of us right now. We're trying to hire an artist, but the world of video games, right, is incredibly anti all AI art, right? And so, the major platforms, Steam, Nintendo Switch, Xbox, PlayStation, whatever, don't even allow games on that are found to have used any AI in their art gen, in their art stuff. And, I think reasonably so, right? Because those platforms sort of fear lawsuits and, what does the future look like? The EU came out with their regulation proposal around like AI training data and stuff, which could, create a bunch of risk for anybody who uses this stuff in their actual products or whatever. So I think there's risk around that, and OpenAI, all these other guys, right? They definitely followed the Facebook playbook of hey, there's no laws and regulations, so that means we don't need to have ethics either, right? Like, I'll just steal everybody's stuff from, if it's on the internet, it's ours now, right? And that's our training data, and then I don't know, the sort of sketchy way that they paid, I think very, very undercompensated folks to do millions of hours of human review on top of it, and make it look good. But yeah, I mean, there's no doubt in my mind that this stuff will be used. I think I have questions about whether small and medium businesses and marketers should be adopting, how fast they should be adopting. And you know what my biggest point around this would be, which is I think you have an obligation to be aware of what is available. And I think this is the best thing you're doing, Chris, is making people aware of what's available, what's possible, what's coming, like all these tools, so that if you go through the process of what are the biggest problems my business is facing right now, and at the top of that list are things that these tools can solve more efficiently and effectively than your existing processes, you should use them. And if that's not the case, you should not try and shoehorn in a solution just because you're like, oh, it's so new and hot right now. Like I'm going to do, I have real fear that there are a bunch of people who, 10 years ago were like, oh, mobile apps are so hot. I need to make a mobile app for my business.
Sure, we remember that.
No, you didn't. Right? And 5 years ago, people were like, oh, NFTs and crypto, so hot. I need to make a coin. I need to make an NFT. I need to get on the blockchain. Nope. And AI is not those two things. I want to be clear. It is definitely more useful. There's way more use cases. There's a lot more things you can do with it. But man, if you're not actually solving your biggest business problems and you've instead said, what can we use AI to do here?
Yeah.
Man, that's broken process, my friends. That's management by idiocy. No offense.
No, it's not strategic. You're not goal focused. The definition
exactly. Solve your business problems, solve your customers' problems, make your product better. If AI can help you do that, awesome. If you're searching for, anytime someone's searching for a problem to solve because they already have a solution.
You know what though? I'll be honest. We all do that a little bit right now, right, Chris?
Oh yeah.
So here's my only pushback on that, and I'm 95% in agreement with that. My only pushback on that is like almost every innovation we've had, it started out like when you think of cloud, don't trust the cloud, all that stuff like that. Now it's $1 trillion venture, and there's this guy named Dr. Wasserman, he's at MIT, and he basically says, a lot of these technologies will help you rejuvenate first, and then they'll help you basically take a new product to a next level, but then eventually they go into pioneering. And the pioneering is like, hey, this is land we've never been on before. And the technology actually lets you pioneer. And like in a very weird way, I think you, no offense here, guys, but the three of us are just old men. I think the kids that are video gaming with people in China right now, I think that they're knocking down barriers that you and the three of us are just like, yeah, that doesn't make sense. But we don't sort of live in this younger generation that just doesn't see barriers as barriers the way we inherently do. At least I do. Sorry to call you guys old men, but you get my point.
I feel older than ever, Chris. You are. That felt on brand for me.
It's a relief for me. Like, I need to be called old so that the way I envision myself and the way I feel match up.
Yeah.
Did you see that? Did you see that there's this viral video and this girl goes to a supermarket. She goes to buy alcohol and she hands the ID to the person. The person hands it right back. And he goes, "Are you going to look at it?" She goes, "Oh, you were born in the 1900s. You're good."
This is a true off-topic story. I'm waiting in line to get into a club, and yes, I still do that sometimes. And I get to the front of the line and I reach into my wallet, or it's the back of my phone, and I pull it out and hand it to the guy, right, thinking it's my ID. I handed him my library card. He looked at it, handed it back, and said, "Get the fuck in here."
Because no one under 21 got a library card.
Nobody under 21 has a library card, dude. Get in this club. You're fine. No, but that's...
Love that.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving along, I'm going to move us along. So the podcast thing, fascinating format, very interested. I can see how Spotify is playing a long game. I get that. I love that. I've done that. We're doing it now. But podcasts are famous for being kind of a black hole in terms of data, not a strong generator of traffic. I'm going to segue into, Rand, some of your thoughts about the no-click reality that we live in, or low-click or zero-click.
I hope you're enjoying today's podcast. Now, please take a moment to hear a word from our sponsor.
Hey, everybody, this is Rich Brooks of the Agents of Change Digital Marketing Summit, a 3-day, 30-speaker event that you cannot afford to miss if you love digital marketing. You can go to theagentsofchange.com to register. It is free to attend. We do have some great VIP upgrades if you're interested, but I will see you at the summit.
What's your topic for us?
Yeah. So my colleague, Amanda Natividad, who runs marketing for SparkToro, so she kind of coined this phrase to describe the universe that we're living in, the last, especially 5 years in tech, which is a zero-click world, right? So essentially, you can see the studies that I did, for example, a few years ago about, Google moving to a zero-click format, the number of searches that end without a click increasing and increasing and increasing. You can see that Facebook, Threads, Instagram, Reddit, Twitter, LinkedIn, TikTok, all of them prioritize native content that does not contain a URL. If you put a link in bio, right, that phrase in your TikTok or your Instagram, you can see those posts always perform worse. If you put an actual link in a LinkedIn post or a Twitter tweet or a Threads post, you can see those posts perform worse. That the platform's algorithm intentionally biases against visibility for those. And I think that unfortunately marketers' tactics have not quite caught up to the zero-click universe, to this idea of I can't track things, I can't attribute them. All I can do is get the measurement from the platforms themselves. How many people watched my YouTube video? How many people saw my TikTok? How many people, engaged with my LinkedIn post, whatever. And then what's the outcome in the weeks and months that follows? So as I get high engagement on my podcast or on someone else's podcast, on YouTube, on Threads, on a webinar, on Reddit, what happens next? And you can measure lift the way they measured lift in the 20th century, right? Speaking of the 1900s. So you can say, hey, we invested in a bunch of podcast appearances or sponsorships. What happened, right? What happens next? And we can't see clicks from that podcast, but we can see that branded search traffic rose 15% the day after the podcast launched. And for the next week, it was 5% higher than we expected it to be. I think that That almost certainly was the podcast. It might not have been. I can't prove it to you. It could have been something else. That's going to be how marketing, I believe, is done in the future, which is really weird because it's kind of how Don Draper did it in 1965, right? So it's throwback ways of measuring and investing in marketing. But here's the trick. Like, if you are throwing all your budget at classic techniques and tactics, which, a lot of digital advertising, right, can still be tracked and measured all the way through the funnel. If you're throwing your money there, you're going to be competing with everyone else's dollars because that's where all the money and all the big budgets are going. A lot of brands and companies are willing to lose money on their ad ROI in order to see growth. So you're going to be competing with unprofitable businesses. I think all the gems, all the opportunity, all the best stuff is in the hard to measure and unmeasurable zero-click world.
Interesting. So you're not just saying that clicks are... We've learned from you for years, and you presented data when no one else did about the reduce in click-through rates and the decline in organic website traffic from whichever medium. But you're now saying, I haven't heard this before, you're saying that is actually where the action is.
Yes, I'm saying you should go do marketing in those clickless places. I will tell you that for SparkToro, we have never had better results from a marketing investment than native LinkedIn video. That's like our number one performing channel, and I can't prove it. I can't, right? All I can say is thousands of people watch these videos, tens of thousands of people watch these videos, and over the weeks that followed, we saw an increase in conversion rate, in free signups, in people resubscribing to the product. And oftentimes when I look in the comments and the likes, I see the identities of the same people who signed up. So you tell me, like, I think what's going on is those videos are getting watched and engaged with. When they see a few of them, they're like, you know what, I got to try this SparkToro thing. They come to SparkToro.com probably through a Google search, right?
Sure.
Branded search for our name.
Often, yeah.
Which, you can see lift in that number as well. But if I counted that as SEO or PPC, I'd be an idiot, right? Like, I know that's not where it's coming from. It's not because I put a bunch more keywords on
direct
the page.
traffic. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So that process, I think, is not well understood by marketers. Almost no one even has a name for investing in that. Right. Like, I'm going to do native social and source of influence content. I'm going to go find what my audience pays attention to. I'm going to be present in those places, and then I'm going to measure the lift from it. And then I'm going to keep doing that based on where I see lift happening. And I'm going to, this is the craziest part. You remember that old, I think it's a quote from like the 1970s or something where the marketer, some CMO says, half our advertising budget is wasted, but I don't know which half.
The department store founder Wanamaker. It's from the 18. It might be like early 1900s. That's a Wanamaker.
Awesome.
That's a quote from like the early days of like Marshall Field and Richard Sears and Wanamaker. Yes, it's
my advice, Andy. You should waste half your marketing budget. Not
play the game. Just get on the board. Yeah.
Yes, I am telling you that, for example, this is, to cast no aspersions on any particular podcast. I say yes to a lot of podcasts and webinars and appearances, and I am confident that half of them go to like 50 people and 2 of them visit SparkToro, and I really should have used that hour better. And you know what? I'm cool with that, because some of those episodes, and I can't predict for sure which ones, but some of them are going to pop. Some of them are going to have, incredible reach. Some of them are going to go much bigger than that series usually does. There's going to be some clip that sort of goes viral on LinkedIn or Twitter or Threads or whatever, on YouTube, right? And it's going to mean that SparkToro is heard by 10,000 people who would not have heard about us otherwise, and all the wonderful brand results that come from that. And if I worked really, really hard to dig into all the metrics I possibly could about every one of these episodes before I said yes to anything, and before I reached out to anybody, I would spend more than that 1 hour.
I'll tie it back. So yesterday we had our annual conference, Content Jam, Content Marketing Conference. Lots of AI topics this year. Chris Penn was our our first presenter. You may know Chris. Everyone knows Chris. And he's talking about AI, of course, and it comes up like in an era of AI when people are talking to an AI and prompting, looking for a brand or researching a brand, and you want AI to know a lot about your brand, how do you do things in the world that help AI know about your brand? And back in the old days, before choosing a podcast, you might have asked about the number of downloads or the reach, or you might have looked at the show notes and looked at their domain authority. Is there an SEO benefit? But Chris's point is, a mention is a mention, and it all gets ingested. And he said a short blurb on the New York Times is worth less than a long, detailed profile on the East Peoria Evening News, because there's more text on the internet, and it's all weighted equally. So it's an so the AI marketer, and this is AI optimization, I think will be the name of this service. It's basically just being active in ways that produce lots of text that AIs will ingest. That means not on certain platforms, which block AI, just to train it on all those things about a brand. It's strength for your case about like, don't worry about the click, don't worry about attribution, set it all aside for a minute, build a brand, be known, be active, stay out there. So the general point is that what matters if you're optimizing users of AI to learn, to help find interesting, useful, compelling things about your brand, you don't care the number of downloads, the number of views, a lot of these social metrics or offsite metrics or domain authority or links or anything like that at all. You want lots of text on the internet about you, regardless of the source. You want it detailed. You want proof points. But yeah, say yes to those podcasts and do those other things for other reasons as well, Rand. I like that perspective. And if there's such a thing, it's called AI optimization. It's like do things that condition the AI. It's that kind of activity.
Yep, 100% agree.
Yeah. And I think that while they're not disclosed, I think a lot of people that are in the SEO business have always sort of known that like your engagement data that you have even on a specific page, they're analyzing your scroll depth, they're analyzing what things you click on and stuff like that. And so if you're married to these blue links that we just know, and a backlink is a backlink, a mention on a prominent site like you just mentioned is probably the same value as a branded blue link, on these other. I mean, they've been smarter with semantic for years, and so I think it's so funny how like something becomes gospel, and then even when the landscape changes, you're just kind of like you're always married to the old terms that you just know and love. You're still talking about page rank.
Well, if we don't care, so let's say I'm considering a collaboration, and currently or 3 years ago, you check the domain authority of the site where the content would live. Today, do you check the terms and conditions to see if they block the AI bots from ingesting that mention?
Yeah.
Maybe, right? Maybe, this is hey, Reddit said, forget it. We're not going to let the bots come here. Well, then is there less value? Does the marketer care? Do you deprioritize actions there?
Yeah, I mean, Reddit is an interesting example, right? Because if they block the bots, what they're probably going to do is package up and sell subreddits one at a time, right? To the large language models. Oh. And so that content is still going to get in there, but it's only going to get in there to the ones that are willing to pay, whoever.
Yeah. I mean, Paul Roetzer has a whole conspiracy theory on how while the media is kind of doing some doom and gloom stuff about AI, you're talking about a whole industry that has not made a profit in 15 years. Like what they're probably going to do is they're going to withhold all of their data from these AI tools. They're going to have almost like a collective bargaining agreement. And then what's going to happen is that all of this news data is going to fill these large language models. And what's going to be crazy is that when AI does something wrong, they're not going to really report it as much because that's where their bread is buttered. And it's really scary that the media and the large language models are sort of in together. I'm not like a big pharma conspiracy theorist, but like my point is that they were scared of like, hey, is the media going to call it out when the pharma companies are paying for the ads? Well, take out pharma and put in these large foundational models.
Maybe,
they might literally
yeah.
finally get the first payday in 20 years. I mean, it's crazy, but it's not too. The only value that these models will have will be their data, and they'd be a fool not to sell it to the highest bidder. And these foundational models will have $1 trillion valuations, so they'll bid the most because they need the data. I don't know. It gets really squirrely and crazy, but
well, if you
I don't think they're gonna. I think it's gonna be the same problem that they had with Google, where it's the prisoner's dilemma, and so they're gonna.
Yep.
They're gonna end up giving it away for nearly free, right? They're not gonna. The New York Times is gonna be like, hey, you got to pay us $100 million, and Bard is gonna be like, we'll just go to the Washington Post for $1 million, and the New York Times will be like, no, we'll take $900K. Like I think that's what's going to happen because I don't see them being able to collectively get together and withhold. They don't have enough bargaining power. It's too distributed. The New York Times is a valuable place to get some content, but even that whole holding company and group, it's like, well, you know what? We're Google. We'll just crawl a bunch of YouTube videos of people talking about your articles. Like we don't need you that bad. It's that kind of thing. So.
Yeah,
I don't know. I'm not sure.
That's similar to the power of brand and the value of like of being one of those top brands. And New York Times can just put it all behind a paywall, and mostly we all pay for New York Times. No one else can really do that because they don't have as much. So they're bargaining. So it's going to be again probably like this tiny group of elite brands that has a lot of bargaining power. If you ask Chris Penn, like if you were an investor, let's say you're like a money manager, what do you invest in if you're bullish on AI? Some people will tell you like certain chip companies. Chris thinks Google because they have the most data, and data is the food that AI needs. So the fuel for AI. So I thought that was interesting and surprising because
this Department of Justice trial against Google, though, Google sure looks like they are. 100% guilty, right? And like their arguments, their counter arguments are just awful. They're getting trounced every day in court. Granted, it's the DOJ's witnesses that are being called right now, but the cross-examination makes Google look terrible. And I don't know how they're going to defend this. Like it just.
Can you summarize that whole story for us just briefly, Rand? I'll confess I'm really not following that at all.
Oh. Sure. So the Department of Justice is suing Google for abuse of monopoly power, right? So basically, the United States has antitrust laws. These antitrust laws were last applied in tech in the late 1990s to Microsoft, right? When Microsoft essentially owned and controlled the, software, the operating system software that powers almost every computer. And they used that to force everyone to use Internet Explorer, Microsoft's browser, and then Microsoft browser, of course, made MSN.com the homepage of everyone. So they were like kind of owning the internet experience and preventing entrants like AOL and others from getting into places. And the Department of Justice feared essentially that Microsoft would use this control to essentially dominate all online activity, that the internet would just be a Microsoft product. And so they, This is during the Clinton administration, right? They sued, they did an investigation. Microsoft was incredibly overconfident that they were going to win this case, and they didn't think they were a monopoly, whatever. And the ruling essentially came down, it was very mild at the time. It came down that like, okay, Microsoft, you have to offer other browsers, when someone in Windows wants to do this, you can't, block other people from being the homepage, which they hadn't ever tried to do. Like they hadn't tried to stop people, but the DOJ basically had some guidelines, and Microsoft really backed off. They were quite scared of it. Like organizationally, Gates and Ballmer were just super scared of this, and so they backed off for like 10 years and really took their hands off of the try to control people's experiences through the operating system or the browser. This, of course, let Google and Yahoo and Firefox and like all these early tech companies benefit. Like I think that many people point to that, many smart macroeconomic observers point to that and say that is what allowed the internet to flourish. That is what made Amazon possible, Google possible, hell, Expedia, all of these things possible. And a lot of people argue, myself included, I would argue Google did essentially the same shady thing, maybe shadier, right? So Google pays Apple, of course, every year for 21 years to be the default search engine. They do all kinds of things to restrict your, if you go to Google and you don't have Chrome installed, they're like, hey, you should install Chrome. If you, have an Android phone, all your stuff is Google by default. So there's a lot of real big similarities. And then, of course, they use their search engine, which is the most popular one out there. It's like 95% of all searches happen on Google worldwide. And they use that market dominance to unfairly compete in other sectors. So when they launched Google Maps, they were like, oh, every other map, every other local site, like TripAdvisor, get out of here. It's all Google. This is one of my favorite examples. There was one day in 2014, I think it was in July. And do you guys remember when you used to be able to search Google and you would see video snippets from video providers that weren't YouTube?
Yes, I remember there was a MozCon where, what's his name, Nottingham? Yeah, he showed
Nottingham.
Yeah, he showed there's like no correlation between video host stream platform and appearance in SERPs.
Yep.
Not anymore.
Yeah, not anymore. So here's what happens. So Google, one day, it's like July 14th, 2014 or something. Basically, that night, Google makes a change, and all the videos that were coming from all sorts of other places, right? We had a Wistia hosted video on Moz. It appeared in the video snippets, like when you search for Whiteboard Fridays, right? The next day, only YouTube. It was only
one
YouTube.
day? It was in one day. I thought they was...
One night. Like the next day, every single result was YouTube. It went from being like about 40%, maybe a little under 40% of video results came from YouTube to 95% of results came from YouTube. That is abuse of monopoly power, right? You have a monopoly in one space. You are using it to unfairly compete in another space. You're making sure that no other video platform, self-hosted or otherwise, can get visibility. It's just it's a 1-0 flip of the switch. I would argue, I wish that had been one of the center points of the DOJ's case. I'm not even sure they brought it up, but they brought up a bunch of stuff like this, making the point that essentially, Google is a monopoly that's abusing its monopoly power, and therefore a remedy should be taken. That remedy could include fines, which Google would happily pay tens of billions of dollars and just walk away. It could include injunctions against future actions, right? So it could be like, hey, you don't get to do this in the future.
Yeah, or debundle like the Microsoft outcome.
And debundling would be really interesting, right? So saying essentially, if someone searches on Google, you have to let them choose whether Google Maps is included is always at the top of the results or somebody else is. You have to choose whether, what if Bing Maps wants to be there? Could Bing Maps be there? Could Open Maps be there? Lots of options, right? So these kinds of remedies, and then the remedy I would love to see, which I'm sure will not happen, but I would love to see it, is Google, you're now 3 companies.
Exactly. I think they were planning on this when they started Alphabet, right? That was right around that time. That was like 2015. I think in Meta too, they are planning for this. They're ready. I think their corporate structure is a strategic preparation for antitrust. Instagram, okay, it's like the baby bells. This is not a new thing. So yeah, that would make perfect sense to me. Why is YouTube, why is Instagram, why are these part of these mega already,
How freaking cool. So when you look at innovation that happens when there's competition in a sector, and the DOJ has actually explored this with one of their witnesses last week or 2 weeks ago. They talked about all the innovations that happened when Google was trying to compete with MSN search and with Dogpile and Yahoo and Excite and InfoSeek and Lycos, and like just the massive amount of innovation in the space that happened versus essentially what has happened since Google became a 90% plus market player, which is just value extraction. It's rent seeking, right? What Google has essentially done is just optimize for more Google properties getting more traffic and more ad results above the fold. That's the innovation that's happened in Google search since like 2009.
I feel like we touched a nerve.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey,
come at me, bro.
And who cares anyway? I would say the same thing for Leslie, like whatever. Chris, you were saying.
Before we switch to Andy, I need to get your opinion, Rand, on what are your expectations on SGE? Like, Google's going to change this. And what do you think the impact? I've read some articles from search engine land that scared me. I've seen some other reports that were saying, don't move my cheese and we're going to be okay. You know, as a pure SEO, like when you think about SGE, if you had to take a guess, how's it going to roll out? How are brands going to be affected?
Let's see. If you've been putting a ton of your eggs into unbranded search traffic for especially informational and exploratory keywords over the last 5-10 years, I would suspect that's not going to go well for you, right? Like Google, like I talked about years ago, right? Google's been ever increasing the percent of searches that are answered without a click, right? Like how old is Tom Cruise? You don't have to click on, some website and go to whatever, yahoo-celebrities.com. Like you can just get the answer. And SGE, the search generative experiences, where Google uses essentially large language models and AI similar to Bard, right, to answer those queries, that's just going to happen more and more and more. I think Google probably, to stave off a lot of criticism and hate and other stuff, will have some linked sources in addition to that. Like there'll always be some links in there. Sorry, always. For the first few years until they can pull the wool over everyone's eyes and screw us all over, there will be some links in there. But I would expect that's the case. And the reason I say that, Chris, is just because Google has found consistently that searchers are happier and perform more future searches when their search is answered instantly right in the results. So, a lot of people are like, Rand, I don't believe this zero-click search research, because why would Google, cut off their advertising revenue by answering queries right in the search results? And my answer is, that's not what they found, right? Their research, which they've published, shows that when searchers get a fast answer immediately right in the search results, they are more likely to do more searches. And so they tell advertisers, don't worry about declining click-through rates, because the total number of available clicks and searches has gone so far up. That actually might be true. And I bet search generative experiences are designed to do the same thing, right? Get more people searching more in Google all the time because they get that fast instant answer to all sorts of problems and questions that Google's linked results, were not able to successfully answer in the future or in the past. I can see that. I would say, I think what you just talked about is the AI optimization thing. I don't know if that's what it'll be called, or language model optimization or language model inclusion, or whatever the process of like getting your brand next to all the words and phrases that talk about your stuff so that you appear in those kinds of results. That feels like a very natural transition for anybody who's in search marketing, organic search marketing today.
Yeah.
I put a bunch of thought in this, and I've done some webinars, and actually I had a conversation, several things. Talked to Will Reynolds about this, mutual friend, we all know Will. He said that Google will keep the links in SGE to reduce liability because they don't want someone to do something and say that Google told them to do it. It's like a disclaimer. Interesting idea. Another idea, I agree completely. If you use a tool and that tool has instant, powerful utility and it was a clean, simple experience, that you're more likely to use it again. That is basically the case against using Google at all. And I predict that ChatGPT will gradually supplant a lot of the things that we were using Google for, because it's just a far, far better experience. I predict a decline in the use of browsers because the AI apps.
Wait, Andy, I'm sorry. You think that people are going to use Google less in the future and ChatGPT more to answer
information intent, what are currently information intent queries? Because the experience, the browser-based mobile experience for How Old is Tom Cruise or a million other things is mostly pretty negative. Like, let's say I use like this example.
I think I'm willing to put a bet on that with you. I'm going to bet against that. I'll put let's say $100. 5 years from now, I think that ChatGPT will replace less than 10% of all Google search.
I'll take that bet. I love it. This will be fun. Mark the date. We're going to talk in 2028.
Here's the challenge where I'm with you.
Wait, Chris. Whose bet are you taking? Which side of the bet are you taking?
Here's the reason where the factor that I think that Andy's getting at is that what we know about Siri is a really crappy model, but I use something called Pi that's already connected to the internet. It's creepy as hell, but you get very quick answers with zero commercials.
Yeah.
And my point is that the ubiquity of how Siri 2.0 will be, it's going to take a big bite out of search. And that's just I don't know. But I want to be wrong. I sell search. I'd love to be wrong.
I'm a lifetime SEO. This is the case. This is the case against browsers and search and using web pages to get information. It's not a good experience. The average web page weighs a megabyte. To get to it, you've got to wade through a whole bunch of SERP features. When you land on the page, you have to, accept cookies and decline notifications, and you get a pop-up window, and you want to block the, what's my location. It's a noisy, messy place. And when you start to use ChatGPT's app to get basic information, how do you make guacamole? I want 10 lines of text. I didn't want to visit a site, see, a story about your grandma and be retargeted for 2 months. It's a mess. The internet is kind of a mess. The mobile experience for information intent use is not good generally. And yeah, all of us are going to feel that. Like you take out your phone because you want an answer, and you're going to gradually more and more go to ChatGPT, not just because it's going to find you the answer, but a lot of the things that we search for, we actually have a little plan, and there's a next step. And it can take that next step, which search can't do. Search can only retrieve information. Generative AI can actually write the birthday card or whatever the thing. Like that's a cheeseball example, but there's millions of them. So that's a big factor in it. I think that Google's at risk. I think partly for this reason. But bottom line, and this is back to what you said earlier, Rand, as we come here to the end. But we've all said that there's 3 types of visitor intent: know, do, go, information intent, commercial intent, navigation intent. Build a brand, right? That's where you're safe. Chris yesterday in his presentation said, look at the amount of traffic you get from non-branded queries. All of that's at risk. I think now we need to separate out 2 types of intent. Does that visitor have visit website intent or get information without visiting a website intent? Only a subset of phrases and queries have visit website intent. But I think a fair number of commercial intent queries actually do. The person wants to do research. It's a big decision. I need an audience intelligence tool. I want to look at some websites. I want to see the options. I want to read some reviews. I think that information intent queries are almost all at risk, but that there's a bunch of commercial intent queries for which there still is, and maybe I'm biased, I make my living building websites. There's definitely a lot of interest in visiting websites to get more information because you're in deep commercial intent kind of research mode. Nobody hires a web development company without looking at a portfolio and like checking out a bunch of examples. So yeah, I think we all need to begin to, in the era of SGE and AI more broadly, look at a key phrase and ask, is that a visit website intent query? My thought so far. Poorly formed thought. It'll evolve. Ask me again in 2 months.
I see where you're going. I'm skeptical. Like I'm not you have not sold me, but I bet you've sold a lot of listeners. And I look forward to completing this bet. I think I'm on the verge of winning my bet with Dharmesh from
really?
Maybe 4 years ago.
$100 is fun. How about this? I'll grow a beard and dye it to look like yours if I lose this bet.
But in reverse. In reverse, I want you to go. Dark hair.
And I'll say, Will, it is dyed.
The white bridge.
No. Here's what we're gonna do. Will does his annual sleep out for homeless youth in Philadelphia, which is an amazing product. How about the loser is going to donate $100. Sorry, the loser is going to donate $500, and the winner is going to donate $100.
Okay, sounds great. Pick a cause. I'm on board with all this. I mean, I don't know what $500 will be worth in 5 years. It might not be.
Oh no.
But no. If you want to shorten the window and pick a different bet, and you and I can kind of go public with this.
This 5 years.
Okay.
So,
if Google,
my contention would be basically that the search generative experience uses something that almost every human on earth is already used to doing on the internet, which is going to Google and typing in things. And Google has trained us so well, including upcoming generations, that the idea of going to ChatGPT, learning a new interface, having sort of text responses in a different format, that it will be too unfamiliar. It's like trying to sell
Unfamiliar? It looks just like your text messages. It's text. It's so familiar. That's my case.
Hey, man. Look, I'm going to tell you right now, Mastodon is a better product in every single way than Twitter.
I see what you're saying.
On 100 vectors, and it is incredibly easy to sign up, but it has like a little slight, slight learning curve, like the slightest learning curve you can imagine, right? And no one is moving over, even though 60% of Twitter users despise Elon, hate the platform, would be happier on Mastodon, but they just can't. Changing a habit.
I know it.
Nah.
Yep. This is. I'll make the case with the historic reference. They made a little box and a button that when you push it takes you to any floor in a building, called an elevator. But they had an elevator operator sit in that little box for 10 years because people just weren't comfortable with it.
They still have them sitting in there in a bunch of places in New York.
Yeah.
All right, friends, I have got to run, but this was really fun. Chris, it was great getting to know you. Andy, always a pleasure, and I hope we get to do it again soon.
I love this. Thanks, Rand. Hey,
Chris, we got money on the line, Rand. 5 years.
Chris, let's stay on.
Mark it down.
Chris, let's stay on, and we can put a bow on this.
Okay,
right.
great.
Take care, guys.
Thanks, Rand.
Cheers.
Thanks, Rand. Yeah. Now you're in a blood feud with Rand Fishkin for
It's
$600, $500.
I'm pretty confident in that bet.
Yeah.
I think he's wrong about the familiarity of the UX could not be simpler. That's actually my point, is that it is ultra clean, and that's what people want.
Yeah, I think that, Paul has some really cool ways of phrasing it, but I don't know how he does it. But like, once something is like a clear cut, like winner, what I mean by that is like you go and it's just an absolute better experience. It has this like escape velocity, meaning like it's not like, well, tomato. It's like tomato, or you know what I mean? Like it's just, I don't know. It's one of those things where time will tell. I think that Google has a stranglehold on our mental.
Yeah, it's powerful.
You know what I mean? And it's like this whole "who moved my cheese" thing.
We're very conditioned.
But like you just said, it looks like a text message. And so the mental jump isn't too high and the reward is so quick. I don't know. I mean, like my argument again was when Siri becomes all powerful, like we've already seen how Pi is, creepy as it may be, when that's in every phone, like why would you even need to go to the browser when they have extensions that are going to say, oh yeah, order this thing, like you're going to be able to bypass a lot of the internet simply by talking to it like a human being.
Yeah, the way to use the internet is not going to be mostly with browsers. That was a really clunky. Look what's in my URL. It looks like programming. My address bar says dmm-ran-fishkin (T = 6348BD068. Like that is not. That wasn't made for users. That's how the internet protocol exposed to me, irrelevant to me, visual noise. It's going to be. I think it will be different. I think this is the turning point, and that the UX will actually be the reason it changes.
It also kind of lends you to wonder, like, will it be smart enough to continue to connect you to brands that you know, like, and trust, right? But at the same time, not de-incentivize the free labor that they get. You know what the free labor that they get? Content creators.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, why would I write blogs anymore if I can't be found for them?
Yeah.
Why would I write any awareness content if I can't be found for it? And eventually, if it all comes down to data, you wonder, can they sabotage their free labor? I mean, it's the greatest data, the vehicle they have is user-generated content, right?
Yeah, they need that. They need that. But people like me will write it anyway for email or for sales or for. Yeah. I mean, and crazy as it sounds, Chris, I'd do this. I'd hang out with you anytime, even if the camera weren't down.
Oh, thanks. All shucks.
Do you want to say anything here to close it, or do you think you got what you need?
Yeah, Rand Fishkin, man. How cool is that?
That was good.
He's like an encyclopedia. He's like saying things from like 2014 like
Yeah.
verbatim court cases. And I felt like, yeah, I'm sorry, dude. Like, I don't even remember last week.
Well, I remember the Microsoft antitrust stuff. That was early 2000s. But I also really like that he's a skeptic and that he's committed and has a strong perspective. Rand is not, he's not like drinking Kool-Aid and telling everybody, like, who's ever said that Mastodon's better than Twitter? Like, that guy makes many statements that you can tell he just believes, you know? So he's an important voice in our world.
Yeah, and how long has he been doing this, man? Those videos, if you go back and you look at YouTube, some of those early whiteboard videos, had the handlebar mustache, remember?
Oh, yeah. The Wizard of Oz. Yeah.
Yeah, man. He's been doing this. He's been in it for a long time.
Yeah. He's had he's a super cool guy.
Yeah.
You might want to get Will on here someday.
Yeah, he's down the road. Let's do it.
Yeah.
All right, let's put a cork in this. So to our listeners, to our audience, thank you so much for joining us. We had Rand Fishkin today. This is the idea of getting some of the best thought leaders in marketing, AI, all here, just talking about the good stuff that's going to make you come back. So please like, subscribe. It's our commitment to you to basically provide the best content possible. So thank you for listening, and we will see you next time.